They say rules are meant to be broken. Well, in Formula 1, some drivers take that saying to a whole new level. But these drivers didn't just break the rules, they forced the entire sport to change them. From one driver who forces the FIA to change the rules almost every time he steps into a car,
but he is forced wide by Verstappen, and Verstappen
to another who had to die for changes to be made. Here are the F1 drivers who forced the FIA to change their rules. Max Verstappen is arguably the most controversial driver in F1 history. When he made it to F1, he wasn't even old enough to drive on public roads in most countries. At just 17 years old, the Dutch prodigy made his debut at the 2015 Australian Grand Prix, becoming the youngest driver to ever compete in Formula 1. But the veterans weren't exactly thrilled about sharing the track with someone who couldn't even rent a car. See, Verstappen's arrival sparked immediate controversy in the paddock. Other drivers questioned whether someone so young could handle the immense pressure and responsibility of driving in F1. If only they had magic powers to see into the future of the now four-time world champion. But to be fair, at the time, they had a point. The sport had never seen anyone this young before. The FIA quickly realized that they needed to act, and just months after Max's debut, they introduced a new rule requiring drivers to be at least 18 years old before they could race in Formula 1. Verstappen had literally forced them to close the door behind him, ensuring his record as the youngest F1 driver would stand forever. But perhaps Verstappen's most controversial moment came at the 2021 Brazilian Grand Prix, in a fierce battle with Lewis Hamilton. Now that isn't a surprise, now is it? As Hamilton attempted to pass him around the outside of Turn 4, Verstappen aggressively defended his position, forcing both cars well off the track. The incident wasn't penalized at the time, but it sparked intense debate throughout the paddock about what constituted fair racing. The controversy forced the FIA to finally create clear guidelines about leaving space during wheel-to-wheel battles. They introduced a new rule stating that if an overtaking car is significantly alongside during a corner, the defending driver must leave at least one car's width of space. After some of the antics from the last season, I'm pretty confident in saying that half the drivers don't even read the rules. Max Verstappen may have made the FIA rewrite its defensive driving rules, but Lewis Hamilton forced them to completely change what drivers could do on the track and off it. The seven-time world champion has always pushed boundaries, whether it's with his racing style, his fashion choices, or his pursuit of social justice. One of Hamilton's earliest run-ins with the rulebook came during the 2010 Malaysian Grand Prix. Racing against Vitaly Petrov, Hamilton desperately tried to break the toe down the main straight. What he did next was something no one had seen before. He weaved back and forth across the track multiple times, trying to shake off the Russian driver who was stuck in his slipstream. The move was technically legal at the time, but it raised serious safety concerns. Other drivers argued that such unpredictable movements at high speeds could lead to dangerous accidents. The FIA, they agreed, and they quickly introduced a new rule stating that drivers could only make one defensive move when protecting their position. But Hamilton wasn't just changing the rules of engagement on the track. Fast forward to 2020, at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, and Hamilton decided to use Formula 1's global platform to make a powerful statement. At the Tuscan Grand Prix, he wore a t-shirt on the podium that read, "Arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor." The message was clear, but it sent the FIA into a panic. The governing body had never faced a situation like this before. While they supported the driver's right to speak out against racism, they worried about the precedent of using the podium ceremony for political statements. Their response was a controversial, nothing new for the FIA then, with the rule requiring drivers to wear their race suits zipped up during all official ceremonies, effectively banning any form of political messaging through clothing. Sometimes it takes tragedy to force change, and this time it was the death of French driver Jules Bianchi. The 2014 Japanese Grand Prix started under ominous conditions. Typhoon Fanfon was approaching Sakosa's circuit, bringing with it heavy rain that made visibility poor and track conditions treacherous. Despite the weather, the race went ahead. On lap 43, coming into the notorious Dunlop curve, Adrian Sutil lost control of his Sauber and crashed. While a recovery vehicle was removing Sutil's car, the unthinkable happened. Bianchi, fighting to keep control of his vehicle, hydroplaned at the same corner. His Marissa struck the recovery vehicle with such force that it lifted the crane off the ground. The impact was catastrophic. After being rushed to the hospital, Bianchi fought for his life for 9 long months before tragically passing away in July 2015. He became the first driver to die from injuries sustained during a Grand Prix weekend since Ayrton Senna in 1994. The FIA knew they had to act, and they launched the most comprehensive safety review in years. The most visible change was the introduction of the Halo, a titanium structure designed to protect drivers' heads from impact. This new design would save countless drivers over the years. But the Halo wasn't the only change that came from Bianchi's accident. The FIA also introduced the virtual safety car, a system that forces drivers to reduce their speed by around 40%, allowing safety vehicles and marshals to work without risk. When it comes to controversial moments in F1, few compare to what happened at the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher was already dominating the season, having won 4 of the first 5 races, but the events that day at the A1 ring would force the FIA to fundamentally change how teams could control their races. Schumacher's teammate, Rubens Barrichello, had been absolutely brilliant that weekend. He out-qualified Schumacher and dominated the race from the start, building a commanding lead that he carried all the way to the final lap. The Brazilian was just a few corners away from a well-deserved victory when something unprecedented happened. With the finish line in sight, Barrichello suddenly slowed down. The Ferrari team had given him an order to let Schumacher win. As the 2 red cars approached the final corner, Barrichello reluctantly moved aside, allowing Schumacher to take a victory that even the German champion seemed uncomfortable accepting. The fans were furious. Boos echoed around the circuit as Schumacher took the top step of the podium. In an awkward moment that only made things worse, Schumacher tried to make amends by pushing Barrichello onto the top step and handing him the winner's trophy, but the damage was done. This blatant manipulation of the race result had crossed a line, and the FIA knew they had to act. While team orders had always been a part of Formula One, this incident was just too obvious, too cynical. The FIA responded by banning team orders entirely, making it illegal for teams to interfere with the race result by telling their drivers to swap positions. Although this was soon removed after the Austrian Grand Prix in 2010. Ferrari were also hit with an €800,000 fine, not for the team orders themselves, which were technically legal at the time, but for bringing the sport into disrepute by breaking podium standards during celebrations. The FIA never fails to surprise us, do they? Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.